everybody, it's me, Laura, and today we're going to be creating my lover's envelopes. Oh my goodness, what can I say? I love this thing. Yeah, back at it again. Bad puns. Anyways, I've got a paper template right here, and I had to just figure this thing out. I got my idea actually looking through photos online, and it just came to me. I'm like, why don't I do this? This would be so much fun in polymer clay. But I had to come up with my template first. So right here, you see me going through all my measurements. But really, in the end, when I started looking at it, I thought, no, you guys need to see me have this drawn out in my notebook with all the measurements laid out and showing each area. So that's what I did right here. I thought I'd give you guys your template right there so you can refer back to it anytime you wish. Anyways, I've got my template all made up, and I'm coming in now with my pop can tin. Yes, we're back to the pop can. I couldn't help it, have to go back in. And I just thought, yes, we have to do this, right? So I've got my paper template right here, and I'm using my Sharpie marker to just go ahead and mark it off so I've got a nice traced out piece right there. And this way then we'll bring in the scissors that I used actually in the masks that I did. Use those same scissors to cut this piece out. And be careful again, remember this tin is sharp. So even when you go to curl it like I did with my hands, be careful because this stuff can cut you. So if you've got little people that want to do this, moms, dads, adults in the room, everybody involved, please be careful when you're cutting the tin. It's very sharp on the edges. All right, so now that I've got this tin cut out, and I'm just coming up and I'm going to fold it right up to the very end there with my point up. Okay, that's all you're going to do. And when you fold it, it's gonna, this tin, yeah, it likes to pop out of my hands. Be careful with it. But once you have it together, staple it. Take your stapler and staple the tin. Now, my first one didn't work there. Didn't quite go through. But no, the stapler will work. It'll be great. And it'll go right through your tin and it'll keep it together for your pocket here. Once you have it stapled on both sides, okay, then I like to take this little pocket I've created and I try to bring apart both ends or both sides so it'll create kind of a little hole in there, just like I'm doing right here. But again, be careful, this is sharp. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to create we're going to bring in the clay. And we're going to put the inside. Now, there's two ways of doing this. I probably should have said that first. There are two ways of doing this. And that's why on this particular envelope, I'm going to show you one way. And then the second envelope, I'm going to show you the other. All right. So I decided, because I had first, this is new to me. Really, it is. When I started doing this, I thought, okay, let's go ahead and do the inside of the pocket first. And looking back on it, this is probably not the best way. It does work, but maybe, maybe do it the other way and you'll see that later here. But I went ahead and rolled out this white clay and it was rolled out on a number 5 setting on my Atlas pasta machine. Yes, it was very well conditioned. Keep that in mind. But also when you condition it so well like I had here, it wanted to stick to everything. So keep that also in mind. If you want to really make this work well, have it where it's a nice happy medium, not too soft, not too hard, but enough to make it where it will stick to the tin and it won't be too soft, okay? Mine here was probably maybe a little too soft when I did it. That's why I couldn't quite get it down into the entirety of the envelope. That's okay though, because we're going to be filling this thing up anyway, so that will not matter. Now, once I have this trimmed up by using my blade, I put my little envelope to the side and we're going to go ahead and create my little fancy mandalas. Now, this is, I think, a sugar veil mold, and I will have a link on my description area for this particular thing. And I love this thing. Oh my goodness. I got this originally from Michael's, but I don't think they carry it anymore. So you're going to have to look online. So like I said, I'll put the link in the description area, but I absolutely love this thing. So right here, I have used this before. As you can tell, I'm taking out the little bit of excess right here. I use baby powder, but of course you can use cornstarch to help make that a release agent on this particular mold. And then I'm bringing in my liquid Sculpey, and I'm bringing in the silver, and we're going to go ahead and fill it in. I'm using my knife. If you're wondering how I deal with my liquid Sculpey, go and check out my transfer, the last one I had done. It really gives you a good sense as to how I use my liquid Sculpey. And right here, again, I'm putting down the liquid, and I'm just kind of scoring it over using my knife here. I love my kitchen knife, my butter knife that I use in this stuff. Oh my goodness. It just spreads so well. It's great for filling in. And then once I have that, you're going to bring in either a credit card or some kind of plastic card. And I had a Fire Mountain one here. I do believe Sculpey also makes like a little scraper in one of their kits. You can get that as well. But, you know, for me, a credit card works great. So anyways, I'm just doing that. I'm scraping off the excess, and then I'm just going to the next one and so on. Now, I want to give you guys a little hint on this. When I started doing this, I found the best way of being able to get up all the extra was to go ahead and use one swipe right across the image I was trying to do. One, if I could do it in one and not have to scrape back over, this way then any residual clay will not show up on the piece I'm trying to make a mold of. I really did find that it was the cleanest way of being able to get all the extra clay off, and then this way then when you go to bake it, you're not going to have a bunch of residual. Now that being said, I also like to bring in a baby wipe. Sometimes that helps too, just to kind of make sure I'm cleaning up all the extra clay. Now in this regard, most of these did come out fairly clean, but I did have a couple that had some extra residue clay in the opening areas. So you're going to have to go back in either with a needle tool or an Exacto knife to kind of clean those out. But if you could just do one scrape and bring off all the excess clay, that's the best way to do it. I also want to mention here that when you're bringing these up, bring this up gently. Do not rip them right off the mold because you might just go ahead and damage them too. Now, once I have that done, we're getting to the fun part. I like to bring in my scissors and cut these things into pieces. Oh my goodness. Gives you so many options. Holy cow, does it. So I started like, okay, I like that, sorta. That was one idea. But I'm like, well, let's maybe cut out some more pieces. So that's what I started doing on this particular piece. And I thought, well, we could go that way. Or maybe I just go ahead and cut even more smaller pieces. And finally I got down to where it was like a single little, almost looked like a a fish skeleton. I don't know why, but it did. And then placing that in on the envelope. Okay, so now that we got our interior kind of work done, we're going to start putting the clay on the outside. And I have not baked any of this yet. So keep that in mind, because now when I look back on it, I'm thinking I probably should have baked that part on the inside first before I went ahead and put the outside on, because it's a little harder to handle then. But once I got this on the outside, and I'm like, right here, just try to take out as many bubbles as possible, because you are probably going to get a little bit of that, but it also helps too. And I did roll this out on a number 5 setting on my Atlas pasta machine. The 6 was a little bit too thin, but the 5 seemed okay. So once I had that on the envelope, I then brought in my blade to go ahead and kind of cut up and tear away excess clay. All right, once you have this envelope all trimmed up, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to bring in my needle tool. I wanted to make a little bit of line that it would look like an envelope, on this one. And I did this and this was my first envelope, okay? Just so you guys know, this was my first envelope design, all right? And when I was doing it, I thought, yeah, that looks pretty good. But I will say that looking back on it now, I'm like, you don't necessarily need to do that. In fact, I almost prefer you don't, okay? But I do like this part. And what I'm doing here is I ran some silver clay on a number 5 setting on my Atlas pasta machine, and I decided to put in a couple of really fun little striped details right onto the back side of this envelope, or I should say the front side. And it just made this thing look just a whole lot better. Once I had these fun little stripes on here, and yeah, I just keep thinking, okay, this is the front side for me and not the back side. I went to the back side and decided to put a couple of nice little silver stripes on there as well. Now, once I had those stripes put on the back side of this envelope, I went back to my front side and put the other half of that cut mandala piece that I had done before. I decided to add that in. Once I got that done, this thing had gotten to the point where I thought I have to bake this because it was I kept thinking this is sticking too much. This is too much for me to handle. I really do suggest when you go to make these envelopes, if you do the interior first, bake it, then go ahead and do the outside part and then bake that as well. It's just a little bit easier to deal with. But if you could put the details in while it's still unbaked clay, I definitely suggest that. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and create our little puffy heart. And this right here is a candy mold. So I got this at one of my local craft stores. Go look and see what they have in the baking aisle, because to me, I'm like, oh, they have all these little fun little molds. And sometimes they're so cheap. Holy cow. And I'm like going, yay, I got a whole bunch. Whole bunch of hearts to choose from. If I want, I could cut off a few and give them to my neighbor. But in this case, it works out really good. They had some heart ones there. I just went ahead and took my tin foil now, and I'm just kind of pushing this into my little candy mold and then molding it up into a nice little heart. Once I have this thing formed into my tin foil, then we'll go ahead and, yeah, I'm using my Exacto knife to sometimes dig it out. It's just the easiest way. And then I'm going to take my clay, and yes, it was done on a number 5 setting yet again, where I flattened it out, and then I'm forming it right over the heart and then pulling the rest off the back. Once I have that, I thought I wanted this particular envelope where the heart would be kind of more, how do I put this? Away from the back side of the envelope. So in other words, I would have a gap. And the reason why I wanted that gap was, let's say you wanted to give this as a gift to somebody and you wanted to put a personal little note in it. Yes, you could do that because you've got a little bit of a gap in the back side. So keep that in mind when you go ahead and make these. These really can turn into such beautiful little pieces. Now I've got one of those mandala pieces that I had done in that candy mold and I had baked it up. This thing, I loved it. I thought, let's go ahead and form it right over my little puffy heart. It's such a nice little detail. Oh my goodness. And then just use your scissors to trim this up. Oh, one more thing. On those mandalas, I bake them in my oven for about 7 to 10 minutes at 275. So if you're just wondering about that, that's what I generally do. 7 minutes I find is usually plenty, but if you want to go a little longer, you can. Anyway, I'm placing this heart then, kind of on the edge. I want to see where it was going to sit. And then I'm coming in with my circle Kemper cutters. I actually say my smallest circle Kemper cutter. And I'm just creating these little dots here and I'm placing them right on my heart. Once you've placed most of your dots, go ahead then with your needle tool and make a hole right down into the center part of the heart there. Now for the fun part, yes. Filling in with my roses and my hearts and all my little details. I absolutely love this part. So I'm going to take some pink clay like I have right here. I'm going to bring in some dark pink also. And then I'm going to just start creating my roses. Now, if you want to know how I do my roses, just systematically, there is a video I did a while back, I want to say a couple years ago, that's strictly on roses. I will also be creating my leaves here, so I also have another video on that. So if you really want to go into detail on how I do my roses and my leaves, go check back into my history on my videos. I have a couple of videos on that right there. So to keep my heart and my rose from falling over, I decided to make a teardrop form with some white clay, and I placed it in behind that heart to keep it kind of up away from the backside. This way then I can keep my gap. And that way then if I want to, I could put my note in there for later. But for right now, that's how I've got this going. From here though, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys watch my hands talk as I fill in with more roses, leaves, and all sorts of fun stuff. Okay, so I decided to take some advice from some of you who have been like, why don't you use that liquid Sculpey for adhering the clay to the clay? So I thought, okay, I've come over to the dark side, we're going to do it. So I had, my envelope was already baked, but I thought, okay, let's go ahead and use a little bit of the translucent liquid Sculpey and put that on the backside of my heart so it would adhere in really nice. And while I was doing that, I was really thinking about the liquid Sculpey versus my epoxy or my super glue. And I really realized why I do what I do when it comes to the super glue. A lot of times I am, how do I put this? I am forming clay either on eggshell or some other surface. So I'm not necessarily going clay to clay. Now, if I'm doing clay to clay, it makes complete sense. I totally love that. And you know what? Actually, thank you to all of you who suggested, Laura, you should do this. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I keep putting it off. Yeah, okay. So thank you for that because it brought me back to like the clay on clay. Good idea. Sounds great. It's when I get to other surfaces like my eggshell and everything else, then it becomes a little bit more questionable because it doesn't always adhere and stay there. I really do need to use my super glue. Here now, I'm going to start bringing in some of my metal filigree pieces that I had. So if you have any extra jewelry pieces that you want to bring in, mind you, I'm using this specific type, but you could use anything. So go looking around, see what you have in your jewelry or whatever that might work, and put it into these little envelopes. They make such a wonderful extra dimension to them. Okay, I'm bringing in another piece of that molded mandala stuff, those fancy mandalas I made, and I'm going to bring another little bit of liquid Sculpey in. I'm going to place it on the back side of these things, and then I'm going to place it on the envelope itself, and then I'm going to bake this whole thing one more time. Okay, so now that I've gotten this thing baked again, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my scissors and I'm going to try and cut this off. Now, when I did it with the scissors, it didn't always come off as clean. And so I thought, okay, and I had a little piece that came out. Anyway, I decided that I would go ahead then and use my blade. And that made a huge difference. Now, mind you, I had to do a little super glue there. And those middle pieces, they don't like to stick in there, right? So hence the super glue. But eventually, though, I had to go to my blade to help cut off those kind of, really rough edges on the side of the envelope. The scissors worked okay, but the blade was nice because it was a nice flat, cutting edge that would go straight across that edge of the envelope, and it worked out beautifully. From here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start working on the back side of the envelope here, or the front side, however you want to look at it. And I'm going to bring in my larger hearts and I'm going to cut out a larger heart for the main focus on the back side. I'm also going to bring in some more of that circle Kemper cutter and do some little dots. Also some more of that filigree mold fancy mandalas that I made. I'm going to bring in pieces of that, and I'm just going to really decorate up the back side of this envelope. At this point, when I was working on the back side of the envelope, I did not bake it, or parts of it were not completely baked. So when you get the back side all finished up the way you like it, go ahead and bake it again. Okay, once this is baked, I went ahead and I cut some hearts out with my pink clay. And I'm just really, from here, I'm just going to be gluing in all these little hearts to all sorts of different little places on my envelope, on the back side and back on the front side, as I call it. From there, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my rhinestones, my rhinestone chain, any other little metal pieces I might want to add in if I want to add it in, although I think I'm pretty set with what I've got here. And I'll bring in my wire as well, and I'll place that into the top of the heart. Remember the hole I poked in the heart? Yeah, we're going to go ahead and bury the wire into that part, and then I'm going to go ahead and trim up each of those wires and curl them around, finishing up this envelope. All right, so now we're going to start working on our second envelope. And this time I decided to take the different approach and do the outside first, where I would clay that and then we'd work on the inside. And this was a much better way to go. You know what? I didn't have nearly as many air pockets, and maybe it was the clay itself. Maybe the clay was not nearly as soft, and that could very well be. But I just found it was a much better result. And I think part of this was because I could handle this, like I could handle the envelope, but because I had the interior part, that hole into the envelope, if you will, I could go ahead and put my hand in there a little bit if I needed to, or pinch it on the inside, and then lightly on the outside. Mind you, I still got air bubbles here like I have right here, but really, in the end, it really did make a big difference for me when it came to just designing and working on this piece. So I really do suggest clay the outside of your envelope first, then go to the interior. Once I clayed the exterior of this envelope, I baked it. Right away, I just baked it. I thought, no details or anything. We'll come back in with that later, and that's what I'm doing right here. I even forgot, this is where I forgot to put down the little indent where the envelope thing would be, the little lines that you get on an envelope. And I thought, to heck with it. I'm just going to, I have some white clay, rolled it out in number 5, cut up some slices, or I should say some little strips, and have them go right down onto the envelope, giving me really that same line. So I didn't even have to worry about it. Here I used, of course, my liquid Sculpey to kind of adhere the clay to clay. I did have to trim off a little excess. That's the only thing I don't like. The nice thing about super glue is that it disappears. That liquid just kind of vanishes. But anyways, yeah, just putting down my little stripes here on the back where the envelope is. And then I'm going to just come in with some of those fancy little mandalas I made in the clay, and I'll start adding those in on the details on this envelope. So again here, I've decorated up the outside of that envelope. I then bake it. Once I have that baked, I'll come back in like I'm doing right here, and I've got another piece of clay flattened out on a number 5 setting. I'm going to place that into the interior of the envelope, and then I'm going to decorate it up with some of the little mandala bits, or maybe even some hearts. I will bake that part, and then, and mind you, on your baking, it's about 7 to 10 minutes. I will then come back in and start filling up this envelope. Okay, now we're going to start filling up this second envelope, and I've made my hole in the top of that heart again for that same reason. This time I am allowing that heart to settle right next against the back side of it. I decided I just wasn't going to leave nearly the gap this time, and I'm just going to place my flowers in as I go, this time using white roses instead, or mainly white rose. I came in with also some, I was thinking about the dark pink, but I thought, no, it looked too close to the envelope color. I need something to distinctualize it, so I came in with my lighter pink then. So at this point with my second envelope, I have baked this thing thoroughly. So it has been in the oven at least another 7 to 10 minutes, making sure all, at least that, probably 15, especially with these roses and with the stems and everything, because it gets kind of thick. So I like to go a little longer at this point. Anyway, we've baked this piece. And from here, I'm going to bring in my rhinestone chain, my pointed back rhinestones, and we're going to start adding those into the envelope. I will then also decorate the back side. Now the back side, I decided I was not going to put fresh clay. I just didn't want to go through all that. So I'm going to take some of the clay I've already baked and I'm going to glue that in with my super glue because I just don't want to have to go through another baking round. And add in my hearts and a little bit of that nice fancy mandala stuff and just finish up this piece entirely. So from here, I'm just going to go ahead and let you guys watch my hands talk as I finish up decorating this second lover's envelope. Okay, so this is the end result of creating my lover's envelopes in polymer clay. Please use this for study and reference. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I'm always wondering what you're thinking. Otherwise, I am sending out my biggest hugs to each of you, and I hope you have a fantastic day.